All right, and we are live with the Brown Bag Business Chat. I am your host, Adam Fout. As per the usual, I'm here with Robert Niesenbaum, who I've pronounced his name correctly this time. Say hi, Robert.
How you doing?
And we're here today to talk about lead generation with social media. Now, I know that a lot of people are familiar with social media in a very general way. Maybe you have a Facebook profile, maybe you play around on Twitter or not, but it can be very intimidating, especially when you're starting to use social media for business. And it's not exactly clear what we should do, what best practices are. And I think a lot of the time there can be an idea that I need to do what I've always been doing, right? Which is I just post stuff. And then I talk to people when they make a comment on a post I've made. But it's a little bit different when your goal is lead generation, when your goal is sales, not just driving some traffic to your website, not just having a social media account because you're expected to have one. So Robert, owner and operator of Tactical Social Media, is a bit of a rebel in the social media space, I would say. Does things a little bit differently. So we wanted to talk to him about what he does differently and why. But before we get started, Robert, why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself, about Tactical Social Media, why you do what you do, and I'd like to know too, why did you choose that name?
So my background in social media, I've been using it since 2007 to actually drive business for previous businesses I've owned. I started teaching it based on what I was able to do for myself back in 2011. And once I moved up to Washington from Arizona, I wasn't initially looking to set up a business. This is something I was still doing on the side, and ultimately it took off on itself. Mm-hmm. So in terms of the name piece, I tend to not look at all the new features when they come out and broadcast about all the features and what they can do and what they're, what they are. It's more of how you can use them. So I look at it from that much more tactical approach. The overall strategy is pretty simple and pretty basic. The blueprint, how you get from where you are to where you want to be, from the start to through your strategy, that's the planning piece. Those are all the little things that I do so much differently than most.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I've noticed is that it's very easy to see some of these. Everyone's a social media expert, right? The market is flooded, and so a lot of the time you're seeing the same stuff over and over. And I think that was why it was nice to start reading some of the stuff you've written and to see some of the way that you interact and you don't just talk about it, you live it. I mean, when we first met you, it was exactly through these kind of tactics that you're describing. Is you were not focusing on posts, right? You were focusing on starting conversations with us.
Well, and for me, social media has always been done the same way I would approach any sort of networking event. So when I started playing with social media, when it started working for me, it really wasn't about what you were posting.
Yeah.
Most of the business I found and what I ended up getting was because I was actually looking, for lack of a better word, stalking other pages and other people that I was trying to connect with.
Yeah.
No different than old-fashioned cold calling back in the day.
Yeah.
I would go knock on doors and say hello. You build relationships with the gatekeeper.
Mm-hmm.
You might get in if you just walked in there and tried to sell them something or just to drop off flyers. They're going to ignore you.
Yeah.
Everything I do is really based the same on what my sales process was or my lead generation process in the real world was years ago and even networking today.
Yeah. And I think that's really important, is that just because this is happening online, just because this is happening on Facebook or on Twitter or wherever, doesn't mean that everything's magically different somehow. And I think it's easy to kind of get in that mindset. We've done a few interviews with you in the past where we talked about your different approach, but it's really not. When you think about it, it's the same old approach. I see you want to say something. I see you're ready.
It's the old school approach of how you used to do business.
Yeah.
And I think why most people end up in this trap of doing it by posting content, and I think especially for new businesses and everything that's been written as a result, is when I started, all your content would get seen, but there wasn't a whole lot of people out there looking at it. You had to make connections. You actually had to have people come see your posts. people to like your page, because when Facebook launched pages, the only way to comment or interact was to have liked it first.
Yeah.
So there's a reason for getting people to that page and getting them to like them. I don't know, 2010, 2011, you could literally post anything and everything, and you would get engagement, interaction, reach. Everybody knew who you were. You didn't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
So it suddenly became this easy trap that post and I'll get. And, you know, it's interesting. Everybody complains about how difficult it is to find content, post content. But actually, that's far easier, I think, than doing it the way you should be doing social media. Anybody can throw up a piece of content, but it takes a lot more time, effort, and work to really to network.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah, I really guess in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about, you know, I think that the word itself tells us exactly what we should be doing. Social media. You know, it's not yelling in a megaphone media, right? It's so oh, go ahead.
No, and the other piece about it is that it's not, for me, it's that media piece that everybody's treating it as that not so much yelling in a microphone, but it's broadcast.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we do enough of that through direct mail. You're going to get better results through direct mail where you can send it out. So, you know, the approach is to get rid of some of that for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you know, that's one thing I think that we should talk about is that it's easy to get caught up in this pressure that I have to put out content. And I think it's almost a little strange because it's like that is something that makes sense if you're a large organization that's expected to be maybe a thought leader in a space that's expected. You know, I expect IBM to be putting out articles, right? But especially for the small guys, you know, if I've never heard of you, I don't expect, you know, I'm not coming there to read your stuff, you know? And a lot of the times I'm coming there because I'm interested in what you're doing, or I might want to buy something from you. I want to learn more about you. So I think that time is spending the time reading articles, finding a good article, finding a good video, and then sharing it might, like you said, be better spent trying to start conversations.
Well, there's two pieces to this. So first, content is important. You have to have content.
Mm-hmm.
The problem now, I think, is that most people are looking to write the content to get themselves visible. Okay?
Yeah.
For me, content has nothing to do with making myself visible. Content for me is all about supporting my credibility or displaying my authority. It's about providing value. It's not to get me found. My job, like it used to be in the old days,
mm-hmm.
Was knock on doors, get you to see me, get you to request or want my content.
Yeah.
So the methodology I use now is content goes up when I have it, when it's available, when it's something of real value.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a week in between posts, I don't care. In the last 2 weeks, I think I posted maybe a dozen articles on between 6 sites.
Yeah.
I don't have anything. I don't have time. I don't do it. But it's going out, and the other piece on that is that we always think of this content as what we're posting.
Yeah.
And the flip side is, well, that content should have a purpose other than you just being visible.
Mm-hmm.
That it should give you the credibility, some authority. It should help you build relationships. Your comments, everywhere you interact, everything you post is content. Even if it's a comment, that's still a form of content.
Yeah.
And you'll get the same results by responding and interacting with somebody else on something they've written without all the effort of having to try and create content from scratch to post in your profiles and figure out when to post it and all the effort into writing it.
Yeah, I think that's good. That's important too, because especially if, you know, Google's ranking their own stuff, of course, but I mean, Google's ranking even tweets in the, so when you go searching, every now and then you're going to see a tweet, you're going to see a Google Plus post. And if you have commented on there, you do have some visibility too. But like you said, you know, it's not as much work, but it is content, you know, and it does take work to create a good comment that, you know, not just one that just some half-assed comment, but something that adds to the conversation or inspires someone else to comment as well. So that is an art in itself.
Well, and it's no different than thinking about my comments or no different than I think about my tweets. They have to be written in such a way that while there's no limit necessarily to comments, I figure that first 100, 140 characters has to catch you.
Yeah.
So that's still crafted much the same way I do a tweet, and I've got to get some sort of action out of that.
Yeah.
And what I tend to find is, again, everybody writes content, posts content on their pages, articles, tries to get more reach, tries to do all this, and they spend a whole lot of time and effort for point blank what amounts to a crapshoot to me.
Yeah.
You have no guarantees no matter how good your content is or of it ever showing up in the feed anywhere.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
if you get it, it's a bonus.
Well, yeah, and I think that it's again, it goes back to being social. We're trying to have conversations here, and it's like, going back to the old school methods you were discussing, if you walked in, you find the gatekeeper, and you just throw a bunch of flyers at them, they're probably going to end up in the trash. But if you try to have a conversation with them, talk to them, get to know them, then maybe a couple weeks down the road, you say, by the way, Bob, who I know on the first name basis now because we're such great friends, here are some flyers. Do you think you would mind handing a few out? You might have a very different result.
Right. Well, it's a case of, people do business with people they have a relationship with. It really comes down to that. And if you're simply using people as a lead, as opposed to building a relationship, it's not going to last. And I mean, a typical networking group works the same way. Walk in, drop your business card, say hello, shake hands, let people know what you do, and then move on to the next person. You're not going to see anything out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so,
it's the same thing. You like you said, you can't go into a networking event and just start, blasting yourself out there. You have to start working on those relationships. So how do you go from the let's talk a little bit of like mechanics. So let's say you've decided on Facebook you want to start generating some leads. How do you go about that? How do you decide where to go, what to do, who to talk to, and how do you go from the conversation to the lead?
So the first piece is your page has to be set up properly. It has to be optimized. You have to have all the things in place the right way. And I use that analogy whenever I speak, that if you had this great restaurant which had this awesome food, great staff, but the place looked like it fell down 10 years ago, most people are not going to walk in.
Yeah.
That whole piece of the website, it has to still look pretty and be functional on the inside, or be usable if nothing else.
Right.
Once the infrastructure is in place, you need some core quality posts and content so that when somebody does show up, you have that credibility, you have the authority. There's a reason for them to stay and read more and learn more. Once that's done, I'll post when I have something, and the rest of the time I'm out, again, it's stalking or trolling. I've got a list of either other pages, which could be influencers, could be target clients that I'm after and looking at, any more than I would target clients and knock on doors. And I'm looking at what they're posting on a daily basis. Anytime I have an opportunity to interact with them, I will go so far as, to me, it's to create that visibility piece. So both as myself on Facebook, and get hide in my personal profile and those privacy settings, I'll interact with businesses on business pages. So I have, just on my end, obviously on your page, Deborah Jason over at The Right Direction, I'm focusing on her pages. And these are pages that I know there's always quality content. I know I can add some value.
Yeah.
The other pages I'll look at, just become the fun stuff, are even like news pages, local TV stations, because they've got followings and they'll get 1,000 comments on everything. Locals, aquariums. And what I find is, while those aren't necessarily great places to get leads, they're incredible places to become visible.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Some, and there are little tips and tricks along the way. And one of the best ways I've actually ended up with a customer is, as my business, I had responded to a comment or replied to a comment somebody else wrote on the local zoos page. And I've done the same thing on news pages. And what ends up happening, that direct response, that direct reply to them, they get the message, they were notified, they come back and look to see who the business was. Turned out, they became a client pretty quick. Yeah. It happened to be timely. So it wasn't I was after anything, I was just having a regular old-fashioned social conversation that turned into business.
Yeah.
No different than, that's like meeting somebody, at a restaurant. You happen to shoot the breeze for 10 minutes and they ask you what you do and, oh, I need your services.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that works, right? So
The other piece, the other place, the other place where I really end up with a lot of it is that if you write blog posts and you're sharing blog posts, I'm going to go find those posts through social. So you write a post, put something up under Blue Steel. I'm going to see it because I'm following you on the social sites.
yeah.
I will add a comment to be visible to your audience on that platform. But I'm also going to take the time to go back to your blog post.
Yeah.
And I'll add a comment, preferably different, on that post that shows the client. Because you may have two sets of followers. You may have one who follow your blog posts, and you may have one who follow social media. So there are a few high influencers that I follow. And Deborah's one of those, where I'll put articles on their content or comments on their articles when they post content, and I can track back the amount of traffic that my website gets simply off of what I've written on their blog posts.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. And I've had people sign up for my email database on a regular basis because whatever comment I added, that little form of content on somebody else's post added enough value and enough intrigue that they wanted to know more.
Yeah. I mean, it's almost like piggybacking, you know, and it's not like it's a little different because you're helping them too. Like you said, you're adding value.
Well, and that's just it. So, you know, it's either supporting what they say when they can, or in a lot of cases, I've seen it come from conversations.
Yeah.
That's a great, you know, somebody will make a great point, and, you know, I've tried to do it this way and it didn't work, even if you ask them a question why, or I've seen some success with this, might be something, you know, to look at. Am I missing the point? Anything I can do either to add value and support something, or where I can drive a conversation between myself and whoever's content it is.
Yeah.
So that, because again, the more interaction they get, it's not that initial piece of engagement, it's the continued interaction.
Absolutely.
And if we get the conversation going, so much more comes out of it, and that's the relationship piece.
And you know, even within, you know, depending on the platform you're using, there's ways to kind of organize the people you're interested in and whose stuff you want to see. You know, like on Facebook, Twitter's, I think, is the best for it. You can make some lists and say, okay, here's all the people whose stuff I want to look at and I want to be friends with. But even on Facebook, you know, you can go to a page or a person that you really want to interact with and set them to see first, you know, so that their stuff is constantly popping up so you don't miss it.
And when it comes to pages, I've actually got a trick I use.
Yeah.
Each Facebook page has its own feed. So if as Blue Steel, you can go in and like as many pages as you want.
Right.
So you have an isolated feed of all those potential businesses you either want to see content from, or content or potential businesses who you want to target.
Yeah.
Okay, so you always can be visible. You always see what they're posting, and anytime you go through, you have an opportunity. So I will like as many pages as I can as Tactical Social Media.
Yeah.
Once a day, I can go over and actually just look at all the posts from every page I follow. That gives me all those particular pieces of content. That's basically me creating a Twitter list within Facebook.
Yeah. So it is doable.
So it is doable. And then, you know, it's a little more complicated, and there's a process involved to do it. But I also I use Feedly.com. Version is an RSS aggregator. So all the blog posts I follow are added. I get all the feeds from those. I've also added 20 or 30 different Facebook page RSS feeds. Hard to get those feeds because Facebook doesn't naturally create them.
Right.
I'll have to send you the link later as to what I used. But
yes, please do.
I don't even have to go to Facebook anymore to know when you've posted.
Yeah.
So I commented on the post you put up today for Blue Steel. I actually saw on that RSS feed because it's the first thing I do in the morning.
Nice.
So while I'm on Facebook later and I'm doing other things, if it's that important and that critical, I find it immediately.
Yeah.
So even before I'm writing my own content. And the funny thing about it is one of the big ways to generate any business is through those relationship type content.
Yeah.
One of the biggest problems that most people have is finding what to write about.
Right. Yeah. Tell me about it.
Well, the best thing for me, as I found, interacting with other pages, especially if they're within my industry or related industries, everything they're posting is potential content for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy enough at that point, not only to post something, but I can actually share the content from your page or whomever else's.
Yeah.
And now I'm further with you sharing your content. If it's from an influencer, I am on their radar.
Right.
Especially if you do this enough over time.
Yeah.
So by default, being social actually makes my content curation a whole lot easier.
And you know, it's funny you should say that about influencers, because I think it's also easy to think to myself, oh, this person is way too far out there. You know, they're way beyond me. They're not going to want to talk to me, or they're not interested. But some of them are, and you know, some of them are maybe having other people run it, or they're not paying close attention. But you know, I've been interacting with Neil Patel on his Facebook page, and you know, he responds to every comment that goes on there. And you know, and I was just, when that happened, I was just kind of a little surprised. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. You know, he's interacting. So you don't have anything to lose really by interacting with some of the more influential folks that you think may be a little bit bigger than you're expecting.
Yeah, and there are a few I go back and forth with. I mean, the two I'm normally commenting on and interacting with have been either Dustin Stout,
mm-hmm.
who created the social warfare plugin, and a few other pieces, and he's over at Wheel Media, I believe. And then the other one is Mike Alton over at the Social Media Hat.
Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting because they're writing on content that's very similar to what I do and have a very similar thought process to what I do. So I'm not interacting as if I'm even trying to force a comment. They're writing things and I'm going, and I remember one of the comments that Mike wrote, one of the posts is like, I started to write, it's like, I think you just stated everything that's been in my head for 3 years better than I could. And that was just, I mean, because it was that perfect and it was just that natural comment.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you talk about them coming and interacting back on their content. When I posted on his blog post, I always get something back saying when I interact with him on Twitter or anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But the relationship piece that I've now taken a step further is I've started, because I curate through the feed his posts.
Yeah.
I started sharing a few more of them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've noticed, it isn't just now him interacting with me on his content.
Mm-hmm.
I actually, on a completely unrelated piece of content, the Social Media Hat came back and liked one of my posts today.
Oh, nice. That's awesome.
I've now hit to where at least I'm on his radar.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't go any further, that's just proof that the social networking side of it works. That I said, when I talk to influencers, I don't need them to promote me. I don't,
right.
That's not what I'm after. These people that I'm looking at, these influencers, and it's content for me. It's learning for me. I'm looking at them essentially as teachers.
Yeah.
So to have them come back, and that's the teacher patting you on the back and validating you for something that they've paid attention now to what you're doing. You get that just by writing your own content and running.
Yeah, you really can. I mean, it's the same as if I build a website and then I just sit back and wait. You know, I'm like, oh, and now all the sales are just going to pour in because I have this new website, and that's just not how it works. You know, you have to get on their radar one way or another, and social media makes that possible in ways that really weren't possible before, or were much, much harder. You know, you couldn't just walk into the corporate office of AT&T and start, talking to people left and right and asking questions. But you can interact with them on Facebook, on Twitter, etc. Let's talk about specific platforms. Do you have anywhere that you really like to spend the most time when it comes to social media and trying to generate leads?
The three places I tend to be on the most right now: Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Yeah.
I think Twitter has driven the most traffic back to my site.
Mm-hmm.
I think Facebook, I tend to be on most because it's probably the most laid back.
Yeah.
So what I comment, I can be a little more natural in how I comment.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to be, a little more buttoned up, reserved.
Yeah.
You meet me, I'm at any social media network or social networking group. If I'm out, like tomorrow morning,
mm-hmm.
100 people in the room, everybody's going to know who I am.
Yeah.
I'm usually opening my mouth and saying something that might not be appropriate, offending somebody, but you know who I am, and I can be myself, and that's how I prefer to be online.
Yeah.
Easier to do that, I think, on Facebook than it is on LinkedIn or Twitter.
I would agree with you on that one, especially, although I feel like LinkedIn's changing a bit.
It's changing a bit, but I think where the business is coming from the higher end professionals. So
Yeah.
the engagements and some of the bigger, clients I've had come off of LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
The smaller lead generation stuff, the everyday stuff has been coming through Twitter and through Facebook.
Yeah.
Google Plus, to me, I am on. I'll interact. There are a few places I do. But I think mostly for that is what I get posted there simply has the SEO value because it's going to show higher in the feed.
Mm-hmm.
And search, and Pinterest I use predominantly as where I compile all my content. It becomes a library for me for later. Anybody that looks at me as an influencer or curious about what I recommend, if I've pinned it, it's something that I will recommend. It's a resource that I think needs to be out there.
Yeah.
Even if it's only 1 or 2 a week, I'm simply building a library. I'm not after driving business off of it. It's simply a benefit for anybody who finds me there.
Gotcha. Well, that's good to know. I think people often wonder too, like, where should my time is limited. Where should I spend my time? So that's helpful.
Well, the other thing about it is I run off of a 30-70 rule, that no more than 30% of my time online is actually writing my own new posts.
Mm-hmm.
So you figure an hour per day, if that's all you give yourself, you have 18 minutes. That is 18 minutes to find, write, and post any content. The other 42 minutes need to be spent interacting. So I can spend 10 minutes on Facebook. I can spend 10 minutes on LinkedIn. And I'll rotate throughout the week. So I'm active on all the platforms. I may not be on LinkedIn today.
Yeah.
But I'm on Facebook. Tomorrow I'm not probably going to be on Facebook. I might just be on LinkedIn. So it's not that you have to be on every site every day. And I find it's a lot more fun. I mean, we've gone back to that, to just network and interact with people.
Yeah.
And build those relationships. And I said, you talk to anybody that does this long enough and is written on the subject, it's those relationships you're building that generate your leads.
Yep. Absolutely.
Not what you're posting.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost out of time. So do you have any, if you had to give someone one piece of advice about how am I going to find leads on social media, what would you say?
Biggest piece of advice, get a few good quality pieces of content up on your page, your profile. Figure out who your audience is. Figure out who you would like to target as far as your clients or customers. Find others in your industry that you can interact and network with. And usually then I recommend them picking one other personal field of interest, whether it's a cause that you believe in, zoos, whatnot. And those are the 3 places you need to find people within. And just like as many of those pages that fall into those categories. Start commenting as your business or as yourself. And reevaluate each month. If those pages aren't responding to you, if nobody's interacting with you, goodbye, move on to the next page.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I mean, you even run across people who are hostile from time to time. Well, maybe your time's better spent somewhere else.
That's all. I mean, I've got pages that I've commented on, 4 or 5 posts over 2 weeks. Great stuff. Never heard back, never responded. So I'm not going to add value to them if they're not even going to bother to acknowledge that I did it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Their page gets removed and I go look for other pages.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Well, thank you so much, Robert. Now, where can I know you're going to send me that link so that I can share that out, but where can people find you? How can they interact with you on social media? I mean, that's probably a long list, but I've got it written down somewhere, but tell us how we can find you, where we can see you.
Website is tacticalsocialmedia.org. If you did a search for Tactical Social Media on any social media platform, you're going to find me. It's probably the easiest thing.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. That's true. You can find them easily that way. So, all right, thank you so much for coming on. This is great. Guys, go to our website and you'll be able to see all these links once I've compiled them into a short post. And if you have any questions, feel free to always leave us a comment on that page. Thank you so much for joining. Talk to you soon.
Thanks.